It's a Wednesday, Hump Day Wednesday, November 16th, 2022. Your Day Weather Podcast brought to you by Cowboy State Daily, Wyoming's news authority. Check them out at cowboystatedaily.com. Also brought to you by Chug Water Chili, the gourmet spice of Western life. We are going to have January in November, so why not make up a big steaming pot of Chug Water Chili? Try out their green chili seasoning. January and November, I think that's just the way it feels out there. And boy, is it going to really feel that way as an Arctic front is going to bring snow, wind, and cold to the entire region. First for our friends in Montana, the western Dakotas, and the eastern areas of Idaho and the panhandle of Idaho. Then that Arctic air is just going to surge south overnight tonight and cover all areas by Thursday into Friday. This is going to cause hazardous travel. This is not a big snow event, but it's going to produce just enough light snow with these very cold Arctic conditions to make for some really slippery roads and highways. This is one of these situations where just a little bit of snow in the cold can make things slick out there, so be careful. Check with road reports. Going to talk about snow liquid ratio. A lot of times when folks say, well, how much snow are we going to get is really dependent on the atmospheric conditions and the physics of how snow forms based on temperature and how much water there is in the air. We'll talk a little bit about that. Temperatures are going to moderate some this weekend. It's still going to be colder than normal. But over the weekend, and especially by early next week, we'll get a little bit of a break from this cold. Travel weather, Saturday through Tuesday, right now, looks okay. It's what happens after Tuesday that we need to figure out, and we'll have more on that tomorrow. Also, I'm giving you a teaser. I'm going to talk about this tomorrow, but I did have a podcast listener send a very interesting link about possible impacts from the Tonga volcano that exploded earlier this year that got into the stratosphere. Could we have some impacts this winter? Well, I looked into it some more, and we'll have more for you tomorrow on that. Here's a shot from Interstate 90 right at the Montana-Wyoming border this morning. Doesn't that look a little wintry out there as the Arctic air is pouring into Montana right now and will continue to move south because of this upper level flow coming right out of the Northwest Territories and right into the heart of the Intermountain West. The really cold air is still about right here, but it's going to move very, very quickly later today, tonight, and into tomorrow morning. And there it is. This is by 5 p.m. on Thursday. That very cold air will be right there, spreading south and east and into the region. And there are your temperature anomalies by 5 p.m. tomorrow. So you can see the core of the purple there is right along the divide into Montana, Wyoming, nosing into Colorado. And that cold air spreading onto both sides of the divide. So very, very cold weather regime for the entire United States. And this is by Saturday afternoon and evening. The cold just continues to go more south. Look at those temperatures down in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas there. For November, these are January-like temperatures that we'll be experiencing. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the snowfall and the precipitation that we're going to get with this front. When you look at this, this is not terribly impressive. You're looking at generally a tenth to a quarter of an inch of water available with this system through Friday that will be able to be mostly in the form of snow. It doesn't look like a lot, but you have to factor in temperatures when it comes to expecting how many inches of snow you're going to get. So we have something that's called the snow liquid ratio, which basically says how much snowfall in inches can you expect by what amount of water is available in the air to make it snow. It really does vary by the region of the country, and that really has to do with the amount of what we call how much water vapor is in the air in respects to how much dry air is available, and altitude and all of those things. But for those of you who have lived in different parts of the country, if you've lived in the Midwest or the Great Lakes or the East Coast, you know the snow there is just different than it is around here. And really, why is that? I mean, why should it be different? Well, a lot of it has to do with the temperature that snow falls and the temperature that snow forms in. So a lot of you are probably familiar with the 10-to-1 ratio, which means if you get an inch of water, you should get 10 inches of snow. Now, that is true if you're looking at temperatures that are right around 0 Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit in terms of where you get these 10-to-1 ratios. But in the Intermountain West, the western high plains and in the Rockies and into the Sierras and the Cascades, well, those ratios don't really work out very well, but especially in the central and northern Rockies, where you tend to have naturally drier air and also colder conditions to where these snowflakes fall. Look at all the different snowflake combinations that you get. These large dendrites, you see these ratios of 20 to 1, 25 to 1, tends to happen when temperatures are colder. More likely going to be seeing temperature ranges that are not 32 degrees, but into the upper teens and the lower 20s. So the different type of snowflakes, how they're built and their structure really dictates on how many inches will accumulate. And what ends up happening is you get these different ratios to where you have high density amounts of water, a lot of water in it. We'd call that the Sierra cement that goes into the Sierra Nevadas. You get that really wet pattern that comes in off the Pacific. So there's a lot of water content in comparison to the further east you go. So the Sierras, Sierra cement. You get a combination of the Sierra cement and the champagne powder in the Rockies as you get west to east across to the divide. So what ends up happening is we have different snow ratios based on temperature conditions and the amount of water content that is in the snow. So if we were to use the 10 to 1 ratio, this is what you would use most of the time in the east. This is what the snowfall forecast looks like. But if you take into account the very cold Arctic temperatures that are going to be occurring, the snowfall in inches looks a lot higher. See that? That's because the snow stacks up differently based on the fact that the snowflakes will take on a different structure in the colder, drier air of the Intermountain West compared to other parts of the United States. And if you focus in a little bit, this is why you tend to see the Champagne snowfall in the ski areas of southern Wyoming and north central Colorado in this type of pattern. The bighorns have gotten more snow, and they're going to get more of that fluffy, powdery snow. So the water content isn't really high, but this is a situation where you could get 1/10 of an inch of water and get 2 to 3 inches of snow. As we get into the later time frame of the weekend, the colder air begins to shift off to the east. High pressure begins to push in, and this is where we start to see the moderation in temperatures. Again, it's not going to be really warm, but these are the temperature anomalies by noontime on Tuesday. You can see they're not as cold. They're closer to average. This is the next system we're watching. This is around Wednesday of next week. Question marks on what this system will do, so stay tuned. We'll have more on that for you tomorrow. Well, you've learned more about temperatures and snow than you ever wanted to. Thanks for hanging on this long. See you tomorrow.